Good afternoon, good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad to have you back with us. Dave, another week has gone by. We're here. We're just talking about retirement. How are things going?
They are going well. They're going well. Just plugging along, enjoying the summer, getting things done, trying to keep people ahead of their retirement, which we're doing pretty well with that as well. So no complaints.
Well, that's awesome. That's great. And today, Dave, we have a special conversation. We've talked about this one on the show a few times, but with our Q&A, we're talking about the power of zero today. And
Good.
go ahead,
Good.
tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, no, I'm all about that topic. That was where we got started, webinars and things we do. That topic. Be good friends with Dave McKnight, who wrote the best-selling book, The Power of Zero. We took that content and created a webinar and turned it really what we are today. I can't say enough good things about what he teaches and the concepts that are inside that book.
And with that, for everyone that's joining us live, thank you so much for being here. And those watching on replay, also thank you so much for being here. And what we do on this show is we come on and we ask Dave just every type of question we can for retirement. We've got some great topics. The one today, obviously, is the power of zero. We get into Medicare, we get into Social Security, long-term care, reverse mortgage. Dave, I feel like we get into everything under the sun, and I don't know how you store all that in your brain, but you do somehow.
Yeah, sometimes it's more tough than others, just with some of the details of each of those programs, but we do our best. We definitely don't sell many of the things we talk about. We're not Medicare experts out selling Medicare or Medigap insurance. We're not reverse mortgage experts in the sense that we're out selling those products, but it still hopefully can give you a lot of good information to help you make the right decisions and really get you in a position, if you are going to go down that path, that you know the questions you should ask to make sure you're getting what you really should be getting as it relates to your retirement.
And the thing I really love about this show is we can get people to come on and ask their questions to see where they fit into their retirement. A lot of times we ask the question 1 through 10, where are you at on that retirement path? And a lot of times we'll get people either, in the 4s or people in the 8s. And so we want to make sure that we're getting people all the way up to the 10 so they're ready. But it takes education, exactly what you talked about, to make sure that they're ready and they're asking the right questions.
Everybody's got something they're about, and it's going to be for many people, but everybody's got something. Either they're concerned about the market, they're concerned about taxes, they're concerned about Social Security program and what's going to do. I don't know if we just look for things to worry about or it's the reality of we have plans that aren't structured correctly, so we have to worry about these things. But everyone's got, it's our goal to help you get to a level you're educated enough to take worry off the table.
And for those joining live, please submit your question. Again, as we talk about the power of zero today, that's just one part. We're going to branch in and talk about a lot of different subjects within the power of zero, but also go ahead and submit your question. And Dave, if we're ready to start here, I want to jump into Jim's question. And he's asking, how large should the life insurance retirement plan be?
So let's cover a couple of things here for anybody that may be new to the show. Life insurance retirement plan is a permanent insurance policy that's structured to help eliminate a number of the risks in retirement. And one of the biggest ones being tax rate risk, because the assets inside of these programs are growing tax-free and you're able to pull the money out tax-free. Here, the question is in regards to one of the other key aspects that the life insurance retirement plan offers, and that is a chronic illness rider, or what many others would call to as a long-term care rider, where you're able to use the death benefit to cover a long-term care event. Our recommendation is somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. Now, when we look at the cost of a long-term care event now, if it were to happen, it's lasting somewhere between 2.7 and 3.4 years on average, and the cost can be anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 a year on average. So as we map that out, 400 to 500,000 seems to be a good number for people to use to really help offset a potential long-term care issue.
Dave, what's the chances that you or I are going to need long-term care?
At this age, hardly any. Yeah, I think it's 1% going into age 74. But once we get into our life expectancy or beyond, which is in the mid 80s, 70% chance. If you can imagine, you got a 70% chance of becoming permanently disabled. Pretty high statistics when we look at age 84 to age 88, depending on if you're male or female, somewhere in there. That starts going up substantially.
And you also have a webinar and you talk about long-term care, and tell me a little bit about what that entails.
Yeah, so the goal of the webinar is to help you better understand one, what a large long-term care event is. Number two, to get you thinking about it. Biggest problem with a lot of things in retirement is we just never give it any thought until it's too late. And then we're forced with making a decision that's probably not the decision that we want to make based upon the place that we're in. But we talk about that. We also talk about solutions to solving a long-term care event, anything from insurance, which is something many people are using, as well as life insurance retirement plan and how it can work.
And Dave, another question I have on the life insurance retirement plan, or we call alert. Wesley says, do you have a company recommend for these, for the LERPs?
There are a number of companies that we recommend that are going to vary depending on your state that you live in, your facts and circumstances, maybe even your health issues. If you're in really good health, usually we can get you rated with some of the top companies in the industry. If you got some bad health, what we find sometimes we may have to downgrade a company to be able to get you the rating you need to be able to make it affordable if you're wanting to move forward with this. So my recommendation for Wesley or anyone that's contemplating this is to sit down with our office and let us talk to you about your situation. And then we can bring the companies forth that have the requirements to meet the needs, because the problem is you can't go out to these companies and just buy products anyway. It's not like you can just go like Walmart or Kmart, or I guess really Kmart you can't anymore either. I guess they're all closed, but Walmart or Target, and just go buy these products off the shelf. It's something that you're going to need an advisor to work with. And we want to make sure that we're not just addressing this one issue, but we're addressing your overall retirement.
And Dave, you have a list of a certain criteria that they need to meet in order to be able to work with you also, correct?
We absolutely do. We want to make sure that their retirement's important to them, that they're making commitments towards their future. I mean, it's one thing to have an advisor that's working on your behalf, but if you're not willing to put in the time, if you're not ready to really make the commitments, it's really not going to do you much good. If you're not willing to take time to educate yourself, we provide a ton of education in our training. I talk about it all the time, that I believe we're one of the best educators when it comes down to individual client meetings that I've ever seen in my career, working with thousands of advisors. But we still can't do it all in the time that we have with you. You're going to have to spend some time on your own to get educated on some of the topics to help you understand what we're trying to accomplish with your retirement.
And Dave, even breaking it down into this, the life insurance retirement plan, you also have a webinar on that one as well.
Yeah, we do. It's amazing the things that we cover in that webinar. We talk about the requirements it should have. We talk about how it should be compared to a marriage. Again, anytime we get into insurance products, they are not meant to be short-term products. If you're getting into an insurance policy of any sort from a retirement standpoint, and you're expecting to do it on a short-term basis, you're going to come out the loser. Very, very much like a marriage that only lasts a couple of years and you get divorced. Usually you come out financially losers because of the sheer cost of everything you put into the wedding and getting it together, and then the split of everything once you get divorced and the attorney fees you have to pay.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, let's get going on here. So let's jump down to Rick. Rick's asking, what if you have 90% of your retirement assets in after-tax assets, with 50% of amount will be taxed as capital gain? What should be done?
Well, the biggest thing you want to do is really look at options such as the life insurance retirement plan, because you're in a situation where you're needing to get this money into tax-free environment. And we've got historically low rates, even from a capital gain standpoint, let alone an income standpoint right now, with a warning that they may be going up. So my recommendation would really be to sit down with our team. Let us go through your situation. Let us look at options to be able to take the tax off the table, get into a tax-free environment, and allow you to get that growth. Now, Rick, you may be able to still put some money into Roth accounts some way. If that's available, I would encourage you to maximize those as well. But you're not alone. We do have people that have way too much money in the after-tax assets bucket that we've really got to get moved around.
And Dave, I do want to encourage all those who are watching to go ahead and submit their retirement question. I do have one from David from Facebook. I want to get pulled up here and see if you can help me on this one, Dave. David's asking, what is a good way to structure estate planning to avoid some of the exorbitant taxes, especially related to expense real estate that has massive appreciation and is worth $3 million? Is there a step up in basis for income tax? Any tips of estate planning for cash transfers?
David, let me answer the question with a few comments. Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer all of this. Now, when we look at the current situation that we're facing, you do get a step up in basis on your real estate once it gets transitioned over. Now they're talking about taking that away, which if that happens, the estate planning becomes much different than it is today. And if they lower the estate tax amounts down, the thresholds from the 11 million plus we have now down to the 3.5 they're talking about, it becomes an issue. Biggest thing you can do on an estate transfer standpoint, is to really look at those tax deferred accounts. That's where we have the biggest issue. And with step up in basis currently with capital assets, you end up, not having to pay the tax on the gain. Now, if you're over the threshold, you may have to pay some estate tax. But if you've got money in tax deferred accounts that have never been taxed, you're going to pay maybe, in current environment, 37% tax on that. Your beneficiaries will. Plus, you're going to have an estate tax you're going to have to pay that could be, depending on what state you're in addition to federal tax, you could be 40 or 50%. So by the time we're done, if you've got tax deferred assets, what we find, if someone's subject to estate taxes, they may only get 10 or 20% of those assets ever transferred to their beneficiaries, which is really hard to deal with. I would recommend to sit down with an estate planning attorney. Unfortunately, we can't really refer you to one, not because we don't want to. The problem is they're licensed by state. And not knowing the state you're in, but even if we did know 50 states out there, very hard for us to go do the due diligence on estate planning attorneys through all 50 states to where we can feel comfortable referring people to their offices.
I think it's a great point. And David, I hope that answers your question. Let me know if you have a follow-up question. I'll be glad to see if we can throw that back in there. Dave, we do get a ton of questions on estate planning. It seems like lately, it seems like that one's been a huge, a big topic that's been going out.
It has, and it's because with all of the proposals that are out there, it's becoming a more important topic. When you look at starting my career, we used to talk about it all the time, because back then, I think when I got started, the estate threshold was right around $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. It was very low. Well, then they increased it so much. And part of why they did that is estate taxes historically have been revenue neutral, meaning it costs them as much to get the money as it was taking them the money they brought in. So they're saying, hey, if we got to spend as much as we're bringing in, why don't we just increase these limits and have less people have to deal with it? Well, then we get up to this $11+ million threshold. It puts a very small percentage of America in a position where they got to deal with it. Now they're talking about going backwards. And if that happens, a lot more people in the scope of the IRS's environment. And now we've got to deal with these at a much higher level.
Yeah. And again, David, thank you so much for that question. I hope that helps. And Dave, thanks for helping on that. I'm going to bring up one by Tong here, Dave, and you might have to be a little explanation, because again, I'm going to let everyone know we're pulling these from webinars you've been to, or people have just jumped on and asked you a question, through email or through conversation. So Dave, this one from Tong is saying, I believe there is still tax on the gains in the traditional IRA before converting.
Tong, let's talk a little bit about this as we answer your question. And what I want to do is explain some of the misconception out there. And I think you're kind of hinting to one of these misconceptions that we see with a lot of people. Many people think in these traditional IRA accounts, somehow there's a capital gains tax, or there's some built-in tax that's happening inside of there. Capital gains seems to be the biggest one, that they believe somehow they're going to get that money out just having to pay capital gains tax. Remember, in these accounts, none of this money has been taxed for most of you. Everything in there has been tax deferred. So the gains are irrelevant. What you're looking at is this whole account value. So if that account value now has $100,000 and you're going to take it out, unless you've got standard deductions you can offset the distributions with, you're going to pay tax on 100% of the money that's inside of there. So ignore capital gains, ignore the growth of that. Look really at what the value is, where your current tax rate stands, where your future tax rate you expect it to be. That's going to help guide you as you make these conversions into a Roth environment.
Dave, what's the biggest mistake you're seeing as people are trying to get into retirement? Because stuff like this, Tong brings up a great point, is they're hearing a lot of information, but they're really not getting the proper information through all the education out there.
Yeah, we see a lot of mistakes out there. To me, probably the biggest mistake and the most damaging mistake is people just give up. They forget how much can grow over a short period of time. And I look back in my own life and I think about this. I talk about here in this environment, I've talked about in my webinars, I was raised very poor. My family really didn't have much. Well, it didn't take very long from the time I got my degree, started with a CPA firm, got into a firm. I mean, within a 5-year period of time, I was at a point I was making six figures. I was doing extremely well. Well, that was over in theory, a very short period of time. It was a decade from the time I started school until the point I got to that level based upon my hard work and the knowledge and things I'd gained. Well, I think when we look at retirement, we've just got to not give up. Many times people get into their 50s or maybe even as late as their 60s and think, I just can't do it. So why should I save anything? Every little bit's going to help. And over time, it's amazing how much you can set aside if you'll put yourself on a budget and realize that retirement is going to happen and you need to be better prepared for it. So that would be number one. There are a number of other mistakes we make, but I think that's a big area people have got to realize. Just don't give up. Keep saving, keep putting money aside, keep allowing things to grow and progress. And you'll find that retirement may look a lot better than you thought it would when you were thinking about giving up on it.
So let's take Tong, for example, Dave, and said, hey, there's tax in here. That's what I've heard. So with this traditional IRA, I'm just not going to put money aside for 1 or 2 years. How damaging is that for somebody like that just puts money maybe in their bank account or their savings account because they're saying, I just don't want to deal with anything extra? But that 1 or 2 years, can that really be a difference maker for Tong?
Yeah, it absolutely can, because especially if we look at the past few years that we've been dealing with currently. Now, people believe the market's overvalued, and I'm not here to tell you whether it is or isn't, in regards to what you do. I personally think it is, and I personally think there's going to be a correction, but how do you judge that? How do you pick that perfect time? Now, if you're in retirement, very important that you try to get yourself in a position where you're not subject to a big downfall. But if you're putting money in just generally, the market's going to go up, the market's going to go down. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to time that market. So you do want to get that money working for you. Now, if the market goes down, historically, it's going to come back up. And if you're lucky enough, I guess, to be able to time the market, good for you. But what we find is 90% of the people just aren't that good. The market fluctuate levels. I mean, if some people knew that, obviously they'd be multimillionaires because they understand it. And most of us just don't have that much knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dave, let's jump down to Patricia. Her question is, as the funds in the taxable bucket increase due to growth, should the excess be moved to a tax-free bucket?
Yes, they should. We want these buckets to have the appropriate amounts, and that taxable bucket should only have about 6 months of basic living expenses once you get into retirement. So as you have excess money, there's options during your working years to be able to contribute that into your Roth accounts, but you may have to look at life insurance retirement plans as an option to be able to get this money put into a tax-free bucket with taxable money that you've already paid the IRS the taxes on.
And Dave, this is another great example of if we do something like this and we wait a couple of years before moving our money through the buckets, we're going to see a significant decrease in what we're probably bringing in it also.
Yeah, definitely so. There's a lot to do about timing. We've got to be careful, make sure we use the right timing to do these things. But again, even on some of that, we can't get perfect timing. That's just something we don't know when certain things are going to change. But I will tell you, now is a great time to start making transitions into tax-free environments because the historically low tax rates we're enjoying right now.
Yeah, definitely true. Well, Dave, let me get down to another one here. Let's see if I can pull up Catherine's. Can a high earner have a backdoor Roth even with an employer 401k plan?
So, yeah, when you look at this, Catherine, you would be able to do it depending upon contribution amounts, what you're doing. There is an option for you to take advantage of the backdoor Roth still. If you are wanting to move forward, if anyone wants to move forward, I would recommend sit down and let's have a conversation on the topic because there are some rules you need to be aware of. Want to make sure you don't miss out on any of these rules to where it creates a problem for you.
Dave, let me ask you about the backdoor Roth. Do we have much information on this, or do you share a lot on this that we could give to those who are looking into this? Because again, this is another one of those topics that people have a ton of questions on.
Yeah, we've done a podcast on it. Now, we don't in that podcast go super deep in regards to all of the laws regarding it, but it'll give you a good understanding of the way the backdoor Roth and the mega backdoor Roth can work for you. But we are seeing more and more people taking advantage of it. We just see more and more people realizing we do have a great time in tax history to be able to make some transitions. And so they're doing everything they can to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why we're here. Dave, I've got so many questions. We only have about just a little over 10 minutes left. So I'm going to see if I can get through a few more of these. Let's see if I can jump down because this is another great topic is Well, Laura's asking, what can we can use health savings account for health insurance premiums after age 65, correct?
Kind of. Again, depends on what type of premiums you're talking about. If you've got other insurance, yes, you would be able to use it. If you've got Medicare, you can use it, but you can't use it for Medigap plans. I'm not sure why they excluded those plans outside of your HSA benefits and being able to use it, but you would not be able to for Medigap. You would have to pay for that separately. But outside of Medigap plans, yes, you would be able to use your HSA.
Dave, let's talk about HSA and retirement. How does that correlate together, and what can we use or expect from this?
Yeah. So what we find is the costs of medicine in retirement are much higher than people think. In fact, we talk about it in our Medicare class to some level that there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Many people think Medicare is free, which Part A is, Part B and D are not. And they also think it's just going to cover all of your medical needs in retirement, which is not true. There's huge gaps that can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So as a result, you've got to be able to have policies to help cover that, and then be able to have, be where you may have some out of pocket. Well, the HSA can help you cover those costs at a time where you're on a fixed budget, where you don't have a lot of extra income to cover these unexpected medical costs. They can be a great way to provide for that, but you've got to be willing during your working years to set that money aside and let it grow. And maybe for some of you, even pay out of pocket the cost during your working years for medical costs rather than using those HSA funds.
And I think that's great advice. And again, it's even hard for those who are younger to understand the value of HSA as they're starting to set money aside and use that appropriately as well.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm seeing more and more people using them and putting them together. What we're not seeing is as many people saving the money. They think, oh, great, I can put it together and then just spend the money out for my medical needs, which you can. But what you really want to do is, and the other one is they're putting it in accounts that have no growth. They're putting it with a bank that has no growth on the investment, and therefore the account just never grows.
Yeah. And again, I want to encourage you, if you're watching live, to go ahead and submit your questions. I know we're talking about the Power of Zero topic today, but there's lots of other questions out there that you may have. Go ahead and submit those on our live show today. We've got just a little over 8 minutes left. We'd love to be able to answer some of those questions for you. And again, if you don't want to submit it here, you can always send it on our website at theprosperityguy.com under the Contact Us page. And you can submit that there, and we can enter that into future shows as we kind of break into different topics. Dave, let's jump down over to, I don't have a name for this one, but what's the benefit of doing 72T over 5 years versus doing a partial Roth conversion over 5 years?
This is a great question because there's a lot of misunderstanding about a 72T, and it's probably because for most people, it really shouldn't be recommended. Something that the IRS allows to have happen. The purpose of the 72T, only purpose of the 72T is to help you avoid penalty if you need to take out some of the money from your conversion to be able to pay the taxes. So if you're in a situation where you don't have enough in your taxable bucket to pay the tax on the conversion out of your tax deferred into tax free, 72 can work very effective for you. Once you get past age 59 and a half and you're not subject to that early distribution penalty, then you can just do regular Roth conversions over a 5-year period of time, go ahead and take the money out and pay the tax without having to worry about that 10% penalty. So it's really a penalty avoider. Therefore, again, for most people, not going to be necessary. But if you are in a position where you're in your 50s, because it does have to go for a minimum of 5 years or until age 59 and a half, whichever is longer, could be a great tool and strategy for you to be able to still convert money and be able to pay the tax and get yourself where you need to be going forward.
Dave, is this another one of those areas that people have misinformation on, and they just don't know what to do, so they just kind of hold back and just avoid it altogether because they're just afraid?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of advisors aren't very familiar with the way these things work. In fact, I would guess there's a whole slew of advisors, maybe even as many as 50%, that wouldn't even know what a 72T is because they're just not that popular. They're not used that much, which understandable. Advisors can only know so much information. And some of these things that are unique are usually not on the radar of typical CE classes or things. But it is something, though, that's can be great. I mean, there are a lot of options out there. It's like the ability to take money out early from your last job's 401k plan. If you leave your employer before age 59 and a half, and you're age 55, you can take distributions out of that 401k without penalty, which many people don't realize either.
Dave, what's the benefit of you when you're researching and pulling up different topics you're going through? When you pull out something like a 72T, how much advantage does that give you over other advisors? Maybe because you're really taking and breaking down these smaller topics that usually are overlooked by saying, "Hey, don't even worry about that. It's too confusing, or it's not going to work for you." But the advantage I feel like you have is you're learning and educating yourself on these smaller areas that really are looked over.
Yeah, I don't know from a quantitative standpoint what it is, but I do know in meeting with people like I do, they really appreciate the knowledge we have. They talk about it all the time that their last advisor didn't know, maybe even something like Social Security they didn't understand how the Medicare benefits were going to end up costing them more if they made too much income. Things like the 72T, the backdoor Roth, all these things are really things that people appreciate because what they're looking for is options and strategies to maximize the retirement. The more tools we have inside of our tool belt, the better we're going to be able to help them.
And I love that advice. And I think that's something very important that we talk about on this show too, is making sure we have the right tools. Dave, let's see if we can squeeze Stephanie in here. She's asking, do you still recommend life insurance if you are already in your late 60s or early 70s?
Yes. And I also still recommend Kmart, I guess, too. So I'm not sure where the Kmart thing came from earlier. I haven't stepped inside of a Kmart for probably a decade now. But yeah, so if you're in your late 60s, Stephen, then yes, I would say they can work. Early 70s, no. Once we get into our early 70s, cost of insurance is just too much for most people. Now, if you are an exceptionally healthy 70-year-old and you have absolutely no health issues, there is a chance we could make it work, but high probability it's just too late in your life to make the low fee part of the process work for you if you get to that age.
Yeah, Dave, how damaging is it if we're waiting to our late 60s or 70s to get into life insurance?
Well, the biggest damage is many people aren't insurable anymore. I mean, by the time they get to that point, they have enough health issues now. And again, maybe not so much that they're not insurable. They could get insured, but the cost of that insurance is going to be so high, it would make no sense for someone to go ahead and pay that money to insure themselves if they're not going to be rated at a high rating by the insurance companies.
Yeah, I definitely think that. And again, we talk about this, even life insurance retirement plans. Everyone asks, when's a good age to do that? Can they do that in their 60s or 70s? I mean, there's a lot of questions out there that we're trying to address before they actually get to the door of retirement.
Yeah. And when you look at it in your 70s, again, by the time you're there now, some of you may live to age 100. The average life expectancy in the 80s, you still got a lot of years left. So it's not by any means too late to start planning for various things in your retirement, but there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be off the table. And again, if you can't do a life insurance policy, the probability there may be a chance you can't do a long-term care policy if you're trying to cover a long-term care event, because there's no pre-existing condition rules with long-term care. So if you've got bad back, bad hip, maybe you've got a family history of diseases like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's, chances are you're not even going to be able to qualify for a policy at that point from either a long-term care or a life insurance.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I think we have time. I'm going to try to squeeze one more in here from James. What is your view on doing a Roth conversion if part of the taxes must be paid from amount distributed from an IRA?
James, I have no problem with this in theory. Now, this goes back to one of the question we had before on the 72T. If you're younger than age 59 and a half and you're going to be subject to 10% penalty in doing it, no, I would not recommend it. But if you're in a position where you've got to get the money out and moved over, I have no problem, because if taxes go up even 1%, that's the gamble you're taking when you do Roth conversions, is that taxes are going to be 1% higher in the future. If they are, you won. If they aren't, you ended up losing. And our belief is those tax rates have got to double at some point to really get us where we need to be.
And Dave, when do we expect tax rates to go up?
2026, January 1st, it will be the first main tax increase. Now, we may see other tax increases on the wealthy prior to that. And really every day we see tax increases with inflation. You know, inflation is a hidden tax, and not only on retirees from the inflation standpoint, but the more things cost, the more tax ends up getting paid.
And Dave, what year have we had the biggest tax increase, I guess, we've ever seen in this country?
Yeah, if we look at the highest rates, it was during World War II. 1944, 1945. We were at 94% on a federal side. And then depending on the state you lived in, they had their state tax as well. So can't even imagine. Now you would have been making millions of dollars, but still, if you're working hard to make money, pretty hard to give almost 100% of it away, knowing that from the onset.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I just want to let everyone know that we also have many other events coming up. We obviously have all the webinars. We also have a LinkedIn show we do every week, so you can catch that. In fact, that this week's show will be on Medicare and You. So if you've already seen the webinar, that's a great one to jump over because we answer a lot of questions on that topic. Like Dave, you've mentioned, I think there's even a 72T show that you've talked about in your podcast as well. Lots of podcasts out there. You can always catch out anywhere from Android or Apple or anywhere else, even your Alexa. I'm sometimes afraid to say that word, because all of a sudden something's going to go off somewhere in your house. But we also have that, so you can get more information there. Dave, also, what if they go through all of this and they're like, I just really need to get my act together. I need to be able to make sure I stop listening to all my friends and people at the office around the water cooler, and I just need to start. So what's your recommendation to at least get us started today?
Yeah, biggest thing you need to do is schedule a time with my office where we can sit down, my team and I can sit down and really discuss how we work, so you can better understand that. We can answer your questions, and then we can see if we're a good fit for each other. And there are times that you may choose not to work with us, which we understand. There may be times we choose not to work with you, meaning that the value that we can add, you're in a position we don't feel like it's worth engaging us to do that. So we want to go through that process to make sure that it's a jointly beneficial relationship where we believe we can provide the education, the resources you need, and you can feel like you're getting the things that you're paying for as you go through that process.
And Dave, I think it's a great time also to talk about once they're working with the Prosperity Guy, then we also have the Retirement Risk Advisor, which is part of this. Maybe help as we're ending out this segment to how those two correlate together.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at it, the Prosperity Guy is really our education arm. That's where I do all my educating. It's really all about the things that I teach and trying to get you to a point where you can start taking action in your retirement. The Retirement Risk Advisors is our planning company. This is where licensed professionals that are licensed to be able to deal with the issues you have from a retirement side are going to be helping you to solve your retirement concerns, to be able to put plans together. They're going to help you map out the next 20, 30, 40 years to be able to see what that would look like. And then to help you adjust those plans to where you feel comfortable once we're done to have a plan that will work for you and that you can take action on and really start moving forward with your retirement.
And so you'll see that obviously when you're at the Prosperity Guy and you click on Let's Meet, that'll take you over to Retirement Risk Advisors where you can go and fill out the form. And like Dave said, meet with a member of the team. There's a lot of people here working with you, Dave, and helping you to do this. So we're grateful for your time to come on and answer these questions, and very grateful for those joining us live and on replay. Dave, any parting words as we head out for today for this week's live show?
One thing I would tell people who, if you're looking at working with myself and looking at working in our office, again, as CR says, I can't be everywhere. I wish I could, but I'm very engaged in understanding your retirement. If there are things that you need help with, if we got a situation working with an advisor and something gets into an area that they need assistance from my end because I know so much about so many things, I get involved. I'm there. I'm willing to help. To do that, we just want to help as many people as we can, and so it's requiring us to build a team that allows us to do that. We take them through an education process where they have to get certified on the things that we teach. But again, we're here to make sure your retirement gets to where it can be the best possible retirement we can at least lay out. Now you've got to take action, and we do have unknown risks, but we can put a lot of things in place to get you to a more safe and secure retirement than you're already at.
Awesome. And again, Dave, thank you so much. And everyone else, thank you so much for being here. We will see you guys again next week at 11 a.m. Central Time. And in the meantime, feel free to join us on all the other platforms of education that we have, even the Prosperity Club. And we hope that you can find all of that, theprosperityguy.com. That'll lead you to all the other pathways that we have. Like Dave said, that's the education basis. That's where everything starts. And then everything branches out from there. So until we see you again next week, make sure that you keep working on your retirement, make it at the forefront of what you're doing. I know summer vacations are here. It's easy to plan that, but make sure that you plan a lot on your retirement, because again, that's where we're all headed. And Chantel, I see you at the end. Thank you so much for being here, and everyone else, thank you. And we'll see you guys again next week.
See you guys.